Deku may have not been born with a quirk, but what would happen if you made him a little bit stronger than just being born with a quirk? What would happen if throughout the heavens and earth, Izuku Midoriya stood alone as the honored one? That's what we're going to be talking about in this What If. What if Deku was Gojo's descendant? The chosen one, the one who stands alone, and even the honored one. Izuku Midoriya has been called all of these things. All of these things were brought upon him when he was just more or less at the age of 4. Quickly, his powers would develop. Quickly, his strength would increase, and everybody around him would be in complete and utter shock. It wasn't as if he just had some powerful quirk. No, this was far different than just some powerful quirk. His powers seemed to be endless. His powers seemed to be just scratching the surface. But at the same time, it seemed as if he was so strong. At a young age of 4, he had such a massive confidence around him. This confidence would portray throughout the entirety of his life. From the age of 4 to the age of 8, Izuku would develop skills that you wouldn't possibly even imagine. Mastering hand-to-hand combat in a matter of, well, a couple years without even taking a class. He saw some videos online and thought, wow, this was cool, and he mastered them almost immediately, learning every single hand-to-hand combat skill you could possibly think of. Beyond this, his powers began to grow. His skill began to grow. And some of these powers would get shown off when he would get into a bit of an argument with his childhood friend Bakugo. Bakugo, both being at the age of 10, would send an explosion at Izuku. Izuku would stand there as the explosion hit him directly in the face. But it didn't. It didn't really directly hit Izuku at all. He acted as if he flew backwards and that he took damage, but there was some sort of invisible barrier, a barrier that would infinitely protect him, leading to him calling this, well, infinity. A barrier, or basically this realm in between realms that would basically stop anything in his wake, as if there was this small little, well, cloak all around Izuku. No matter what, he began to think harder, think longer about some of his techniques, some of the things he could do. I mean, he's been a big fan of anime and cartoons all his life. Anything crazy he would love to manipulate. So that's exactly what he tries to do. He tries to manipulate various different things, and when he begins to do so, he begins to channel a power that is very unknown to him. A power that allows him to immensely rack up his strength and give off energy that you wouldn't possibly even imagine. The age of only 10, Izuku was able to do such extraordinary things, and as he grows in age, the stronger he will get, and that is just a given. That is an inevitable thing that will happen. His confidence would soar through the roof, and frankly, he would truly believe that he stood alone as the honored one, and everyone around him would believe so as well. Almost every chance the teachers and parents got, they would be talking about Izuku, talking about how he's the future of Hero Society, and that he's going to be, well, maybe even on the level of All Might. But I mean, maybe that's a little too optimistic. But for Izuku, he truly believed this. He believed that he would be better than All Might, that he would be able to protect everybody like he wanted to in the very first place, well, better than All Might ever could. The abilities he holds, the techniques he can manipulate, these are the ones that will set him up. These are the ones that would make him better than All Might. He is not just brute strength. He is far more than just that. He could absolutely obliterate villains, but he could also protect people so much better than All Might ever would. not by just fighting, by using all of his power capable to him, using the ability to more or less have a barrier, a cloak all around him, using an ability that feels just limitless. Everything feels limitless. He's able to even master martial arts and increase that martial arts even more with a technique that's he didn't even know he could even do. It's as if when he throws a punch, this lightning quick reflex is included in his punch, blasting forward, and it's honestly the only thing he could even deem it as is some sort of flash, maybe a black flash. He is completely taken back by his own power. That's how you know he's so powerful. He's taken back by the idea that he can do such extraordinary things. As time would go by though, he would continue with his schooling and so on. He is a very intelligent kid, but frankly he wasn't too fond of schooling in itself. Not a big fan of, doing homework and doing schoolwork in general. It's kind of boring for him. He would rather train, spar, or do anything other than, studying. He wanted to learn more about his power. He wanted to know how it worked. He actually began to see far different things happening to him. His green eyes that were once there, no longer there. He would eventually have to just wear a blindfold. Not because it's some sort of overwhelming power, but honestly the fear of what his eyes could truly do. There's very, very big question marks with his eyes. He doesn't really know. But if his eyes are as powerful as his other abilities, he could look at somebody and they could die. I mean, he's not sure if that's exactly how that works, but that's the last thing he would want. He wouldn't want anybody getting hurt because of some power he didn't know even how it worked yet. So he began wearing a blindfold. But when he would wear this blindfold, it seemed as if he could still see everything. That might sound crazy, but it's as if he can truly see everything around him. Everything to the very, very minute detail, all the way to the atomic level. And this would kind of, in a way, overwhelm him just slightly. But after a day of getting used to it, frankly, it didn't overwhelm him anymore. It's as if he was able to manipulate space all entirely. I mean, it wouldn't be too outlandish from the stuff he's been able to do so far, but it's definitely something he hasn't thought too much about. But his eyes alone became a focal point for students and a lot of teachers all around. They would talk about how Izuku's so strong, he needs to blindfold himself. It's as if he needs to handicap himself, in which Bakugo would get frustrated about. He wants to be the powerful one. He wants to be the strong one. Bakugo would basically lean into this and start training extremely hard. Harder than you would even possibly imagine. But still, there really would be no catching up. Bakugo would always try and shoot blasts and shoot explosions at Izuku, and in a way he thought he was getting stronger, because Izuku would get knocked down, but he would stand back up and tell Bakugo that actually did hurt a little bit. But was that really true? Was Izuku maybe just sparing his feelings? Well, we would find this out a little bit later, when they're both older. When they're about 15 years old, Izuku would be kind of hanging out and talking to people. He'd be talking to people that he sees in front and more or less just chilling. And while he's hanging out, Bakugo would shoot a blast at him from behind. But as he does this, nothing happens. Izuku wasn't actually necessarily ready for this. He was kind of just not paying attention at all. So when he got blasted, he didn't move at all. Bakugo would look at him and Bakugo would be confused. Did he get weaker? Or did Izuku just get so much stronger? Izuku scratches the back of his head and apologizes to Bakugo, saying that he didn't really want to hurt his buddy's feelings, but did he really think he was hurting him all these years? I mean, that's kind of like outlandish, no? I mean, he is the honored one. Izuku would kind of chuckle at this and pat Bakugo on the shoulder, saying that nobody else would even come close to touching him anyways. There's a reason for this. Izuku tells Bakugo to shake his hand. Bakugo refuses, but Izuku insists, telling him he wants to show him something. He waves toward Bakugo once again to shake his hand, in which Bakugo does, grabbing Izuku's hand hard. But he can tell that he's not grabbing Izuku's hand. It's as if his hand is still hovering. What the hell? What are you, magic? Izuku would say that he's not quite magic. That's not necessarily what it is. But frankly, nobody else knows what it is, so it could be magic, I guess. Izuku tells him that this barrier, he deemed it as infinity. It's more or less infinite protection from whatever. He hasn't really thought much about it and where it comes from and where his power necessarily stems from, but he must be pretty strong in another life, or maybe a descendant of someone that transcends time itself. He's not so sure, but like he said, throughout the heavens and earth, he does truly stand alone. Bakugo would scoff at this, saying that he'll get stronger. He'll beat this so-called infinity, and he'll shatter his own limits, and he'll shatter that so-called infinite protection. Bakugo would walk away, more or less pissed, but Izuku would slightly smirk. It's as if he's kind of teaching Bakugo something. That might sound odd, but in a way, Izuku is teaching Bakugo to push himself to get even stronger. He has an inherent knack for wanting to teach others, especially when you have this overwhelming power on top of being overwhelmingly more powerful than everyone else. You would want to teach people. You would want to help others out. I mean, Bakugo is a little rude when you try and help him, but to be fair, he has to definitely help Bakugo in a certain way, and the way is exactly what you just heard. Bakugo would just obviously storm off, and Izuku would just continue on with throughout his day. He would do the normal stuff he normally does. He would do a little bit of training, he would do his schoolwork and not really want to do it, but luckily some people in his school would definitely do it for him because, you know, everybody's just obsessed with Izuku, which is kind of cool, but at the same time kind of annoying, because when he wants to have downtime, when he wants to go get some sweets from the store, there's always someone calling his name, which is a little bit annoying, but overall he just, he deals with it. Still though, the time for middle school is soon to come. He hasn't personally made it to the level of a pro hero yet, and he hasn't made it to what he believes to be his potential, which is the #1 hero, the greatest of all time, the #1 hero worldwide, not just All Might. He wants to surpass it all, in which this is the only way for him to do so. It's time for UA. UA is the way for him to do so. But let's just say UA has heard about him a lot. A lot of people all around the city, every city in Japan knows who Izuku is, at least to a certain extent. Heard of the boy that is extremely powerful, the next All Might. All the hype is around Izuku. So when the middle school is all over and said and done with, well, let's just say you're going to get a lot of calls, a ton of them, from pro heroes, from schools, from anything you could even think of. Izuku is a hot commodity, a commodity that every single hero high school wants and needs. It would be perfect for merchandise, perfect for showing them off, and so on and so forth. Izuku is the ticket, and UA wants Izuku as well. There's no denying that Izuku is powerful. There's no denying what he is as a potential hero in the future, but UA knows that if they get Izuku, they will remain on top. And on top of that, well, they'll be able to hone in probably the strongest hero they've ever seen. So once that last day of, well, middle school is over, Izuku's sitting through it as the teacher rants on about this or that, and frankly, he doesn't even really pay attention that much. Hearing Bakugo get mad at the fact that both him and Izuku are going for UA, but like I said, Izuku's barely even paying attention. The bell would ring and that's all he would hear, and he would leave, getting ready, and finally feeling as if it's time to transcend to the next step in his hero journey. he would begin to leave and think about some things on the way home. He would think about different heroes. He would think about what type of hero costume he would want, what he would want to emulate. He was thinking he kind of likes the more basic stuff in terms of heroes. He believes that All Might is awesome, super cool, but he's a little bit flashy for his taste. Frankly, he's not a big fan of some over-the-top, muscly, and bright color clothing. He prefers his nice blindfold, maybe a dark blue type of clothing, maybe a black type of clothing, something that would cover the majority of his body, but not restrict him from his quick and fast twitch movements. Stuff like that is what Izuku is thinking of, and as he thinks about this, he heads under a bridge. This bridge would kind of be the first stepping stone, truly, for Izuku. And not because he's walking over the bridge, but because what's about to come out from under the bridge. The sludge villain. The sludge villain would come charging in. Out of nowhere, too. Izuku would be kind of confused. He would just stand there as the sludge villain more or less charges at him. Izuku would wait, and the sludge villain would come crashing into Izuku. But as the sludge villain crashes into Izuku, he would split into two, as if, well, Izuku standing there and waiting, and the sludge villain crashing into him split the sludge villain in half, as it more or less just split past Izuku. The sludge villain would reconjoin behind him and would be confused. How the hell did he do that? What is this kid? What is he made of, freaking steel? And that doesn't even make sense. He would still be able to grab onto him, but he can't even grab onto him. It's as if he's like slick with butter all over him. What is wrong with this kid? The sludge villain would more or less be saying all of this, well, straight to Izuku. Izuku would turn around and ask what's wrong with him. He's attacking a bystander, someone that didn't do anything. Who's he running from? He seems so terrified. It's truly sad seeing a villain be so scared. The sludge villain would be pissed, as Izuku's straight up mocking him at this point, and he would charge back in at Izuku, but quickly the sludge villain would regret this drastically. Izuku would put out his hand. Actually, no, one finger, and this odd looking sphere would begin being created. It begins to produce this vacuum of some sorts, sucking in the sludge villain into this kind of condensed ball. As it does this, Izuku would kind of just play around with the sludge villain as it levitates all around him. Izuku would grab a bottle, and as he grabs the bottle, he forces the sludge villain within that said bottle, closing the bottle, and that was it. The sludge villain couldn't do a single thing. Izuku begins laughing at the sludge villain, saying he's really bad at his own job. I mean, if you're gonna be a villain, like, at least do it properly. Like, what is he doing? The first rule of villain is to, like, you know, actually pay attention to who they're attacking. Does he not know who he is? Izuku says that he's kind of known everywhere at the moment, and he decides to attack him. This was the worst mistake ever. It's like attacking All Might. As he says this, All Might blasts through the manhole cover, and Izuku turns around. Oh, you really are stupid. Look who was chasing you. Oh my god, you know what? This makes sense. Well, you know what? Here you go, All Might. I did your job for you. You're welcome. Izuku begins to walk away as he waves to All Might, but All Might asks if he's that kid, Izuku Midoriya, the one that all these people are saying are going to be better than him. Izuku turns and says that he already is. But that is who he is. He is Izuku Midoriya. He is the honored one. Izuku smiles as he just walks away once again. All Might tries to stop him, but Izuku's already gone. He's not really thinking much about it. He just knows that he doesn't really care if he sees All Might. Yes, he is strong. Yes, he is powerful. And he is a big fan. He thinks All Might's great and all. And he's done amazing things for the community. But at the same time, he's no fanboy. Izuku knows his own hype, and he knows his hype around himself. So it's hard to be a fanboy of someone else that you truly believe you'll be better than, and maybe even right now you think you're better than. With that said though, Izuku just heads home. When he arrives at his home, he tells his mother what happened. the whole sludge villain incident, how he got attacked by this goop that smelled like complete and utter garbage, and then he actually decided to attack him. And he was so confused at why he did, because, you know, he's so well known and stuff in Japan. But then he realized the sludge villain was stupid enough to fight All Might. What kind of dumb thing was that? Izuku's mom would slightly laugh about this. Frankly, she doesn't worry too much about her boy. I mean, Izuku's kind of, well, I hate to say it, him for real. But with that said, I mean, she does have that motherly concern nonetheless. But she knows that her son is extremely powerful and 100% can take care of himself. I mean, he's shown it time and time again. Any little incident, any little accident they've ever gone through and he's ever been put in, it's as if it wasn't even really a big deal. Izuku was just fine. Every time he was fine. And with all that said, his mother says that before she forgets, someone actually called. She plays the message, and it's multiple high schools. We're talking about Shuketsu High and also UA, some of the top high schools in Japan, and also other high schools as well. But let's be honest, Izuku only wants to go to UA. The call from UA is straight from Nezu. Nezu talks about Izuku, saying that he's very impressed and he feels that they can truly hone his skills even more than you could possibly imagine over at UA. And they want him to come by for a visit really soon. He doesn't have to take any entrance exams. He doesn't have to take anything like that. He'll be allowed within Class 1A off the bat. So he doesn't have to go through the entrance exam or even the recommendation exams. He's just on board. He's going to be more or less announced as practically the number one student in Class 1A. I mean, right now, he's probably as strong as a top 10 hero, and there's an argument to be said, maybe even a top 5. But still, they would love to have Izuku on campus, so in about a couple of days, if they get a call back, they would love to give him a tour of UA. Izuku and his mother, well, they're pretty excited. Izuku actually can show his excitement as well. I mean, this is still a dream for him. Yes, he's confident about what he can do, but come on, he's going to UA. I mean, that's still an amazing thing that practically nobody, the 1% only get to do, and you got to be super strong to do so, and frankly, he knows he's strong. So he would get his visit with UA. He would walk around UA, check it out, sees what's going on. He sees the facilities, what they're offering, the type of people there, and he's impressed. Frankly, he's really impressed. And they even got a bit of a surprise for him. It's actually one of the big 3 to come. It's Mirio. Future hero by the name of Lemillion, of course. Izuku would see him and introduce himself, saying that he recognizes Lemillion as a strong fellow. He's seen him in the sports festivals. Very funny, in fact. I mean, yes, he had some trouble with his quirk here and there, but he assumes he's amazing with it now. At least from what he's seen in previous sports festivals, he's only progressed. He couldn't imagine how much he's progressed under the watch of not only UA, but he's also heard rumors of a Sir Night-Eye partnership. Is that true? Mirio would be shocked to hear how much Izuku knows. I mean, this isn't like scary or anything, but it's honestly impressive. Someone like Izuku shouldn't really be looking out for anybody and thinking about anybody else but himself, really. But it seems like Izuku is interested in a bunch of things. Interested in Mirio, interested in more or less everything that's kind of going on. And he kind of likes to stay up to date, which is definitely something you want to do as a hero and a future hero in general. But still, he's kind of flattered by it, and he more or less thanks Izuku for his compliments and his best wishes and so on and so forth. Izuku says that it's truly no problem, that he's just recognizing someone and their strength, recognizing how truly strong Mirio is and how strong he'll be when he becomes a pro hero. It's very interesting. And Izuku would get a good feeling about UA. He would finish his tour, and Nezu and even Aizawa, who would come on later, they would ask him what he thinks. He says that he thinks it's brilliant. He thinks it's great. Far better than his middle school. He didn't really enjoy his middle school very much. There's a lot to be desired, but I feel like that's kind of part of the package deal when you talk about middle schools, right? But still, he talks about how UA is flat out amazing. It's definitely. The facilities are great and everything around him is just fantastic. He asks Aizawa a question about his teaching style and what kind of teacher is he truly. Aizawa says that he'll be treating everybody the same, including him, and Izuku smiles and nods. He says that's the answer he wanted to hear, and he assumes that he will openly expel people as well if they do wrong and if they suck, correct? Aizawa looks at him kind of shocked and kind of nods, saying that he likes the kid. He has the mindset of a teacher, and Izuku says he gets that a lot. I mean, when you're better than everybody else, that's kind of what happens. Aizawa shakes his head and says that he'll try to humble the kid pretty soon, and Izuku says that it's going to be harder than you think to humble him. With that said though, Izuku kind of wraps up the tour. He thinks it's great and he's excited to get to work, and says that they'll be seeing him pretty soon, and he'll sign everything he needs to sign because he's committed to UA. He leaves with his mother, and frankly, Nezu is excited beyond belief about the response and tells Aizawa not to mess this up. But Aizawa says that the kid already made his decision the second he stepped foot on the premises. He just wanted to learn more and more about what was going on, who were here, and what type of philosophies everyone has. Aizawa says the kid is very calculated, very intelligent. Even if his test scores don't necessarily show that, he'll definitely be taking UA a lot more serious than, well, little middle school, you could say. Izuku would then take the next 10 or so months to kind of celebrate, train, study, whatever he really needed to do, he would get done. He would be ready for UA, ready to take on whatever he has ahead, and frankly, he would be excited to see what other people had in store. And this would be perfect because after 10 months of waiting, he would actually get a bit of an offer to come watch the entrance exam with some of the teachers, some of the heroes, and some of the higher level students. Izuku would be down for this 100%, and he would watch the entrance exam from a booth high up. He would watch as Bakugo would blast through machines and robots quicker than you'd possibly imagine. Izuku would continue watching, but let's be honest, nobody there was on the level of him. Nothing crazy impressive, but he would sit there and chat with Mirio a little bit, who's currently watching as well, and get some information from it. From information of how or what's going to go on throughout the year, what they're going to be doing, how they'll be getting into internships and stuff like that. So it's some pretty good information that Izuku definitely wanted to hear, and a lot of things for him to look forward to. But after the day was over, he just awaited the first day of UA. The first day would finally arrive, and he would enter the classroom, and let's just say jaws would drop when he does so. I mean, the confidence itself is overwhelming. The aura around him just impresses everybody. Izuku just walks in like he's, well, the shit, because he is. And frankly, there's a lot of people there that are kind of, well, either nervous to see him and nervous to meet him, or just huge fans, or just wanting to meet him for the longest time. One of them being Mina Ashido. She would run up and immediately talk to Izuku, getting to know him as quick as possible, wanting to know what he likes and what he's all about and the type of person he is, and she just wants to know everything about him. Izuku kind of laughs this off and says that she's a bit overwhelming him right now, but they'll definitely talk a little bit later, and he'll get to know her a little bit more. And Izuku says that he really loves her shirt as he walks away. She's confused. He has a blindfold on. She asks if he's lying, and well, Izuku says that he can truly see everything, so he's not lying at all. He sits down and awaits the arrival of Aizawa, and it seems like right when he sat down, he realized that, well, Aizawa was walking in. Aizawa walks in, and he sees everybody take their seats, and he would look around. he would look around to not only see Izuku, he would also see Bakugo and many others, and then he would point at this girl at the front, saying that isn't she the one that's, well, they had to shut down the whole 0 Point robot so that she wouldn't die. She would get really embarrassed, but of course Aizawa would say that she's going to be working on that quirk. What's her name? Ochako Uraka, right? All of you will be working on your quirks, especially her. This is one thing all of you need to realize, that if you are a jeopardy, if you are, well, hurt, and you're always getting hurt in the feat of battle, you're useless. You're useless to a hero. So we're going to be training just that. We're all going to be ready. But first, I want to see what all of you guys can do. So we're going to be doing a bit of a test, a quirk assessment. Go ahead and meet me outside. Aizawa has announced that they're going to be doing a bit of a test. The quirk assessment will show off their quirks entirely, and their quirks are various different type of quirks. There's a large variety of what they can do and what they can't do. So this test will reveal just that. Izuku, on the other hand, well, there's not much he can't do. But with that said, we'll have to see what happens in the quirk assessment and whatever's to come in the next part of What If Deku was Gojo's Descendant. And if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, a sub, a comment down below, all that good stuff, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later. Izuku Midoriya is finally in UA, and it wasn't that hard. Frankly, he got through to UA by just coasting. Everybody knew who he was famous, and they all knew that they needed to get this kid in their school ASAP. So when they have their first quirk assessment type of test, let's just say Izuku would excel with flying colors. He would be extremely cocky throughout it. I mean, extremely confident, cocky, and just sure of himself in general. The ball throw would be easy peasy, he would blast it into outer space, and frankly everything else would be so simple. The race, he's faster than most, if not everybody. The grip strength, he's stronger than most, if not everybody. Frankly, he's just that dude. He's him, for sure. And, well, it's pretty obvious that Izuku was going to excel in all of these things. And Aizawa didn't have a doubt in his mind that it was going to be anything different. I mean, they did call him the Honored One for a reason. Maybe he came up with that name and it kind of caught on, but people still call him that nonetheless. The Honored One is practically untouchable. Bakugo still wants to compete, tries to get better, and tries to even keep up with Izuku, but there's no keeping up. Izuku would end up being first in their little quirk assessment, and everybody else would fall behind. There's no way around it. Izuku was the best, and is the best, and will always be the best. Izuku makes it relatively clear that maybe someday they will be strong, just like him, but that day just isn't quite yet, so they'll have to try harder. It's as if his emotions are infectious. The smile he gives is contagious. Everyone around him is either a hater or a complete fangirl. There's really no in between. And even one like Mina would be kind of just fangirling over Izuku over and over and over again. Almost all the girls are, really, let's be honest. Izuku's kind of that dude, you know? So he would be confident as always. Aizawa would kind of think that he probably needs to bring the kid down to earth, but how are you supposed to do that? How are you supposed to do that to a kid that is extremely powerful and can't really be touched at the moment? And maybe will never be able to be touched ever. But still, Aizawa tries to keep him relatively in check, and Izuku is respectful. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's very, very respectful. That's the type of person he is. He gives respect as long as that respect is earned. He'll give all the respect to Aizawa, to All Might, to Nezu, to all the pro heroes that truly deserve respect. And, I mean, that's just a given. He's really a good dude in general, but he is confident. He is pretty much over his own head in terms of his abilities, but to be fair, his head is like in space itself. That's the bar that he kind of sets. But after the quirk assessment is over, Aizawa does his usual threatening of expelling somebody and so on and so forth, but Izuku is not worried at all, at least not for himself. Next day though is when the first time Izuku would actually be able to get his hands dirty, get some training in. He would actually receive his hero suit, in which it would be perfect timing because All Might is gonna come busting through the door saying that he is here, walking through the door like a normal person, and that he wants to know if everyone's ready for heroes versus villains training. In hearing this, Izuku is excited. I mean, he's ecstatic. All he wanted to do was work hard, train, get stronger. I mean, there's no limits to his power. He truly believes that. So he's excited to get through with some of this training. But quickly he would realize the unfair climate of it. He would soon learn that the training is actually going to be, well, heroes versus villains, 2 versus 2, being that it's Izuku and Mina Ashido, and also it's Bakugo and Tenya versus them. I mean, this isn't even a fair matchup. Izuku even says this. He says that this is the furthest thing from fair. I mean, it's kind of just an automatic win for himself, and also Mina, of course. And All Might kind of chuckles at this and asks what he thinks they should be doing then, and Izuku stands there with his hands in his pockets thinking, what should we do? What should we do? A couple of them are confused. Why is All Might just, saying that they'll do whatever Izuku wants? But they don't know that Izuku has already had a run-in with All Might. All Might has seen the power that Izuku already has used before. So the fact is, All Might's pretty confident that Izuku can kind of do whatever drill he wants to do, thinking that maybe he'll do a 1 versus 2, maybe 1 versus 3, but would be surprised when Izuku says that he'll take on all of them at the same time. All Might is shocked and says that's probably not the best idea, but Izuku says that he'll be just fine, and he won't even do any of his special moves, and nothing crazy. He's not gonna blow people up or anything. All Might is even more shocked.
Young Midoriya, you're telling me you're not gonna use your full power, right?
Izuku would say yes. He doesn't have any intention of using his full power, and frankly, there's no reason for him to either. All Might is completely taken back by this, but he tells him that, well, since he seems confident, they'll give him the chance. Izuku Midoriya against his entire class. People like Todoroki, Tenya Ida, Katsuki Bakugo, and powerhouse hitters all over. But it doesn't even matter. When they all go to the field, they all stand there waiting to fight Izuku. They get their go-ahead. And immediately the first person that charges in, being that of Kirishima, believing that he could tank some of Izuku's hits, takes one blow to the jaw and he's out, unconscious. Everybody is completely shocked. They all charge at him in unison, Todoroki shooting a giant iceberg, but in a matter of just one hand out, it's as if it explodes into nothingness. And Todoroki is shocked as well, continuing to shoot ice at him as Bakugo shoots explosions at Izuku as well, but not a single thing even touches him. Izuku would grab Bakugo by the face, dragging him through the mud as he throws him the opposite direction. Izuku would look toward more people coming his way. He would sweep one of their legs, kick the other one in the chest, and immediately kick the other one in the face. One after another, they're dropping like flies. He would immediately attack Todoroki, being that he is the, difficult in terms of difficulty of students. He takes out Todoroki almost instantly with one gut punch, knocking the wind out of him and knocking him out entirely. Izuku charges back in and immediately flurry of punches everybody he possibly can see. He's not even using any of his other techniques. Nothing. He's not using some big explosions, some beams, some gravitational, more or less, involvement. He's not creating a black hole, sucking them all into an abyss of nothingness. No, all he's doing is boxing. All he's doing is kicking. All he's doing is throwing hands. And Izuku is proving to all of them that he's so much farther ahead. In a matter of 30 seconds, all of them lay on the ground. All of them either out cold, extremely hurt, or knock the wind out of you, stuff like that, or just playing like they're out cold. They don't want to get hit anymore by Izuku. It feels like he's hitting them with 20-pound hammers, as if he's laying these hits and they're hurting so bad. Izuku's accuracy, his potent attacks make everybody definitely rethink how their training is coming and how much they've worked in terms of being a hero. Izuku says he's been training for a little bit, but even from when he was born, he's been gifted. He's been gifted with this type of power, a power that is so unknown to everyone else. But it's okay. Everyone gets their chance, and everyone will soon be strong. Maybe not just like him, but they'll be strong in their own right. All Might is completely shocked and gives Midoriya a big thumbs up, saying that the students being in a defeat like this, having somebody to chase after so much is good for them. It might sound crazy, but people like Izuku need to exist so others can use him as a baseline, so others can push themselves harder to try and transcend their own limits, transcend whatever capabilities they have or what the restrictions they think they have, and try to catch up to Izuku. Izuku is so gifted and trained so hard that it makes it feel as if he's untouchable, but being untouchable in the grand scheme of things is good for everyone else, because they want to be just that as well. They don't want to see someone like Izuku have all this success. They want to have success too, and that's exactly what's going to drive Bakugo. That's exactly what's going to drive Todoroki, and even Izuku gives them kind of their own props, saying that Todoroki's ranged attacks were definitely an issue, and if he allowed him to kind of just completely unwavered just throw attacks at him, it might have become an actual problem. But it seemed like that Todoroki was slowing down anyways. Todoroki doesn't even say a word about this, kind of staying silent, just scoffing at it. He talks about Bakugo shouldn't have been leading the charge. Maybe if he stood behind someone like Kirishima, someone like a shield, and used that as a way to attack, he might have been able to do it even better. But as he's giving advice to everybody, let's just say there's a couple people there that aren't too fond of advice. I mean, it's an ego thing, of course. I mean, Izuku has a little bit of an ego too, so you can't really dock him for it. People like Bakugo, people like Todoroki, they don't want to hear what they did wrong. But other people like Asui, people like Mina, people like Tenya Ida, they would love to hear exactly what they should be doing better in the future. How can Tenya utilize his speed more effectively next time? How can Mina use her long-range attacks with her acid more or less to help everyone else and not just herself? These are things that Izuku has already analyzed, has already figured out, and frankly, it's not too outlandish. We're talking about an Izuku that is hyper intelligent, extremely smart. I mean, he doesn't like doing work because, I mean, who likes doing work? But it's also part of Izuku's nature to study and basically get down any hero ideas that he could possibly think of. So it already runs in his blood to analyze and more or less figure out what others should be doing better, and including what he should be doing better. With that said, the whole heroes and versus villains training kind of came to an abrupt end, because it wasn't really heroes versus villains, it was kind of Izuku against the whole class. But it's still good training. All Might even agrees with the statement of it being solid training nonetheless, and with all of this said and done, they all head off to their other classes. The day finishes up, and maybe even a couple days would go by, and finally an announcement from Aizawa about the USJ would come about, a rescue center that would give them more training. This is what they wanted. I mean, especially after what Izuku talked about and said, a rescue training portion of everything would be beneficial. I mean, not everything is just brawling, fighting, being stronger. Some things are knowing how to rescue, how to properly rescue, how to save people from a burning building, from a collapsed building, from a mountain, being stranded, stuff like that. I mean, it's all important, and Izuku believes this to be true as well. So when they all hop on the bus and start heading to the USJ, they're all talking about who has the strongest quirk, but they exclude Izuku. It doesn't really count. I mean, Izuku is so powerful at this point that it's not even a question. They're more asking who they think has the second strongest quirk. Let's all be, completely truthful about it. Izuku being number one, he talks about the two people that you could argue has the strongest quirks, but strength is also measured in various different ways. I mean, in terms of utility, I mean, he would take someone like Momo over someone like Bakugo or Todoroki. Both of them would kind of scoff at this, but at the end of the day, Izuku would be correct. I mean, Momo has a quirk that allows her to create practically everything that she understands. This would be, in terms of utility, a lot better than having somebody that could brawl with him. I mean, or shoot explosions, or shoot ice and fire, or if he ever uses his fire. But still, it would be better in terms of utility. I mean, even someone like Asui. I mean, yeah, it's kind of odd. Yeah, she has all these perks of being a frog, but being a frog, it gives her more mobility, someone that wouldn't be actually too in danger throughout the fight. She has more utility with certain moves and certain styles of fighting she could use, so it would also be helpful. You got to think about the hero that you're teaming up with. That's the way Izuku thinks about it. He talks about that if he teams up with anybody else, right? He teams up with anybody else that's strong or has a high quirk strength, you might not get as much out of it. Because when we're in situations like rescuing people, I mean, Momo is going to be better than practically everyone there. He brings this up, and a lot of the people there get kind of jealous in a way that he complimented her in such a manner, but Izuku is just saying that he's being transparent about it. At the end of the day, he doesn't really need anybody's help to, save people, but he just wanted to bring that up. So strength of quirk doesn't necessarily matter, at least in the grand scheme of things. He makes this pretty clear because, I mean, he doesn't want all of them thinking that just because you have a weak quirk means that, or a quirk that can't really fight, doesn't mean you can't be useful. You can be useful in so many different ways. As he says this though, they would finally arrive at the USJ. Everybody would get settled in and begin to walk in toward the USJ as Pro Hero 13 would not only introduce herself, but also greet them all in. He would watch as everything's going about, but soon he would get this very eerie feeling. He would listen to Pro Hero 13 as she talked, and Izuku would walk over to Aizawa with his hands in his pockets, telling Aizawa that he has a bad feeling that's coming from that central direction. Aizawa looks at him oddly, but then looks back toward the fountain. As the fountain is it's just standing still, nothing is happening. But eventually a portal would open up. That portal would open up and a bunch of villains would come out. Aizawa would tell Pro Hero 13 to protect the kids, but then look at Izuku as he already knows Izuku's ready to make his move. Izuku knew this was going to happen, so there's no way Izuku is just going to stand there and do nothing. But just as Aizawa is jumping into action, he sees Izuku jump into action right next to him as well, as if it's in a flash. He's so quick. Like, Aizawa didn't know that Izuku could even move this fast. He hasn't seen him move this fast, but to be fair, should he even really be surprised? I mean, this kid is extremely powerful, and at least you gotta let him help a little bit. He heard about what happened in terms of hand-to-hand combat against his entire class from All Might. So Aizawa shrugs it off and says, F it, let the kid fight. He lets him fight, and let's just say Aizawa and Izuku wipe the floor with all the small fry villains. We're talking about every last one that are there are destroyed in a matter of 15-20 seconds. Maybe it's more Izuku than Aizawa, but still, Aizawa could knock out a couple of them pretty quickly too, and Izuku with a giant bang, a giant flash, a flash that is known as Black Flash, he would be able to absolutely obliterate 3 to 5 to maybe even 7 of the villains at once just from the shockwave alone. This power alone is insane. And then on top of that, the villains can't even hit him. They try to punch him, and honestly, they probably break their hand on the barrier of more or less infinity that they try to freaking punch through. It's as if they're punching a brick wall. They're punching something that doesn't even exist. It's kind of insane, in fact. But there's one thing that the villains did to make sure that they were prepared. They were prepared to fight this kid. But at the same time, they may have underestimated how truly strong he is. And, I mean, let's be honest, they've only heard rumors. That's it. No one has really heard how strong this guy really is and how powerful he truly is. I mean, think about it. Hasn't been shown doing anything too crazy. The villains haven't seen it, and heroes haven't really seen it. He did defeat the sludge villain, but that was without anybody watching. Only All Might really saw it, and he didn't even see all of it. He only saw a portion of it. So when the villains bring this monstrous Nomu to take down Izuku, I mean, how prepared is that Nomu? It also might be built to beat All Might, but there's rumors that this kid could eventually be stronger than All Might. But guess what? Izuku believes he's already stronger than All Might. That's what he thinks, and that's what he believes, and maybe he's right. Izuku would await Shigaraki to begin speaking. Shigaraki starts talking about how this Nomu is built to kill All Might, and he's going to more or less rip him limb from limb. But Izuku laughs at him, chuckling, saying that he can send the Nomu at him right now. Why not? I mean, it'll be more fun that way. He tells Aizawa to back off to make sure that he's at a safe distance, and he tells Shigaraki to send the Nomu right at him. Send him straight to him, right here. He'll leave an opening right here, right on the chest. Let the Nomu punch him directly in the chest. Go right ahead. And just as Shigaraki calls the kid's bluff, saying that, oh, well, he must be bluffing, of course, he sends the Nomu at him. The Nomu would run at Izuku. The Nomu would punch right into Izuku's chest. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. That's until the smoke clears from the massive punch and the shockwave that was made, and there's no damage. No damage at all. Izuku grabs the Nomu by the arm as a somewhat sort of barrier begins to surround the small little area around them. It's as if it's sealing themselves off. It's sealing both Izuku and also the Nomu off. This area seems to be off limits, as if you can't enter this area at all. Izuku continues to form the barrier and eventually is completely sealed, and Izuku just walks out of it. The Nomu tries to do the same, but slams into the wall. Izuku shakes his head and says that's a barrier, a bit of a cage you could call it, but he's never used it in this way. I mean, not at least specifically, but he knew that it would kind of work out for the best. He has the Nomu completely captured, because maybe even brute strength wouldn't be able to kill the Nomu, but as long as it's kind of sitting in its little clear jar, it's not like it could do a single thing anyways. Izuku would then look towards Shigaraki and also Kurogiri. The entire area around them seems to change. The entire area was completely different now, as if they're in space, as if they're in some sort of infinite void. Izuku calls this a domain expansion. He's able to more or less manipulate the area around him, or at least the metaphysical space, and it causes the victims to receive all kinds of stimuli and information, and it's endless. Izuku uses this on Kurogiri and also Shigaraki, but he makes everyone else immune to it. As he's doing this, he's kind of just sitting there watching as Shigaraki is freaking out, having some sort of panic, freaking entirely, but Kurogiri seems dormant. But Izuku can tell that it's working on him. He's not exactly sure how, but it's as if the endless stimuli, the relentless information that is being processed and thought through and changed and developed, everything is changing within Kurogiri. He might be tapping into something different. He watches as Kurogiri just flops over as if nothing is able to change, as if he's not able to do anything, and Izuku's confused, but then he looks toward the Nomu. That thing has been mind controlled this entire time. What if Kurogiri was as well? Now this is a revelation he didn't think about, but just as he thinks about it, Shigaraki would then fall through a portal. But he looks at Kurogiri and he didn't do anything. It must have been from somebody else, somebody that is very, very strong. Izuku can sense it. He knows who did it. He's heard the rumors and he knows exactly who this person is. they misplanned, which is ironic for the guy who kind of bailed them out. But still, they weren't ready for exactly what Izuku was. Izuku would then release his domain expansion, and he would look at the Nomu and also Kurogiri, who were on the ground left over. Heroes that include All Might and many others would finally arrive, but everything seemed to be handled relatively easily. And Aizawa just doesn't even know what to say. I mean, this kid, he's just levels above even pro heroes. The way he was able to handle the situation, the way he was able to just coordinate himself and handle and isolate threats that he knew were on the field. He was doing this all subconsciously. He's happy and go lucky, never serious, laughing all the time, but he's very, very locked in when it comes to this, when it comes to these situations. Izuku would say that Kurogiri is actually a mind-controlled human. He's not so sure who he is, but they can probably figure it out with all the tech at UA. He dashes over, grabbing Kurogiri, and he says that since the Nomu is, kind of just staying there, they might want to lock him up as well. The Nomu seems to be something very similar. Seems to be a human, but, made into a monster. But at the same time, no orders or anything like that will come about with the Nomu being away from Shigaraki. In which it's good to hear, because they don't want the Nomu to go rampant, but they are curious about Kurogiri. They're curious about what kind of stuff is going on in the thing's head. So they do bring him in, and they bring him into a high-tech prison. Izuku tells Aizawa that whatever is in Kurogiri, or whatever's going on there, that thing is a human. It is a being that doesn't have a choice, being ordered around. He's seen it before. I mean, he could tell. Some are more or less controlled by fear. Some are controlled because they were not in the living anymore. Some were controlled because their minds were weak. Izuku has heard, seen, and experienced a lot of things. Yes, some things that he probably shouldn't have seen and probably shouldn't be admitting because he's going to get in trouble, but he wants to make sure that they do take care of the situation properly, telling Aizawa that that could be a possible human in there that they could save. Aizawa nods and says that he understands. Trust me, that he'll be taking every precaution they possibly can. Izuku is happy to hear this because he just wants to continue on with whatever training that UA holds and wants to continue on with whatever events that UA has in his future, in which the next thing that is in his future is the UA Sports Festival, which is something that super, super excites Izuku. I mean, come on, it's a UA Sports Festival. He'll be able to take on everybody, take on his teammates, his classmates, the other classes, and so on and so forth. Izuku can't even wait. He's ecstatic. So on the day of the UA Sports Festival, he's just awaiting the signal to go out. But just as that signal is about to come, Aizawa would walk into the tunnel to go grab Izuku, telling him that he needs to come with them now. Izuku asks why. I mean, come on, like, he's just going to the sports festival. He's gonna go have some fun. But Aizawa says that it's important, very serious. Izuku says all right, and he follows him to the prison, and eventually would learn why he's there. It's Kurogiri and the Nomu. More specifically though, Kurogiri. I mean, there's some things to think about. How did Izuku know that he was more or less a human with inside? He explains exactly how he knew. His whole domain expansion, it creates this stimuli, all kinds of stimuli, and endless information, basically restraining the thought processes and actions of the beings that are more or less taken over. But when he did that, Kurogiri had an odd effect. Since Kurogiri doesn't think for himself, shutting down the thought processes of Shigaraki and also Kurogiri separated the consciousness. So the mind that was more or less broken, told what to do over and over and over again, was now free of that. But now getting Kurogiri away from that would be kind of difficult. trying to break him free from that might be difficult. They ask if he can do it, and Izuku says that he has no idea. I mean, you're asking him to do something like breaking complete mind control. I mean, this person could be mentally broken. This person could be dead for all they know. And they're just in a dormant body in between realms. So he doesn't know if he can. I mean, he can give it a shot, but what would him activating his domain expansion really do? If it reversed the effects the first time, it might just damage him more the second. Of course, Aizawa thinks that these are possibilities. Of course there are. But he asks Izuku just to do it one last time on Kurogiri to see maybe it does the opposite of effect on someone who's brainwashed. Maybe it does the opposite effect on someone that doesn't have stimuli at all anyways, doesn't have information in their head anyways. It's all just blank. Maybe if they do that, it will break his mind to the point that he'll be back to his own human self, like he said a human is in there. Izuku shakes his head and finally agrees to do so. And it seemed as if that exact thing that he wasn't sure would work actually works. It actually changes the mind of Kurogiri, changes entirely, but the person underneath, that person is still injured. That person is still not in the best of shape. So once they crack that code, they immediately take this person to the hospital. But Aizawa would get a glimpse as the face of Kurogiri was changing, as the normal mist that is there covering him began to flicker in and out. He saw a person, someone from his past. He saw Oboro, someone that he used to go to school with, someone that he saw die. He tells Izuku that he was right, that Oboro was within that creature, whatever that thing was. Oboro was the person that was taken over, but Oboro is dead. Oboro was just a deceased body, completely dead. So what did they do? Find a corpse? Izuku says no. That person, he's alive. He doesn't know how to explain it, but once he broke the mind control entirely, he can tell that the guy was alive. I mean, not fully in his own mind psyche in the best condition, but he's alive, and he assumes he should be able to make a recovery. Depends on how gritty the guy is, though. Aizawa would nod, and his eyes would show disbelief. But Izuku would check his phone, and he would see that the sports festival is already halfway through, and look at Aizawa. See what you've done, sensei? Now I can't show these horrible newbies how much better I am than them. See what you did? Look at my phone. Look at my phone. Look at my... Okay. You know what? Never mind. I'll just be going now. I'll talk to you later, sensei. Izuku would just leave. I mean, he would just walk out. He wants to see the rest of the sports festival at least. I mean, it kind of sucks that he missed it entirely, or at least half of it, so he can't just join in. But still, at least he gets to see his classmates do well. But he kind of did want to show everybody that he really was that dude, you know, because not everybody got to see him be, you know, insanely amazing. But still, maybe he'll just sit out this one and he'll show them next time. But let's be honest, this won't affect his internships at all. So after the sports festival is all wrapped up and they start getting into internships, the long list of internships that Izuku will have and has, well, let's just say it's pretty long. Izuku's internship list is insanely long, probably more than anybody else there. He is kind of famous, so he has a plethora of options. With that said, though, we're going to be leaving that to the next part of What If Deku Was Gojo's Descendant. Izuku Midoriya has a choice, and a plethora of them. He needs to figure out what he wants to do in terms of an internship. He needs to figure out where he wants to go, and frankly, he has so many choices to really choose from, but not many really catch his eye. But I will say, one does. One really does catch his eye, and that's the one and only Endeavor. It might seem weird, and it might seem odd, but at the end of the day, Endeavor would want to have someone like Izuku, like someone publicly like Izuku, someone that is going to be quote-unquote the next #1 hero, to come and be in his internship. Not only for publicity's sake, but also to help his own son get stronger. Because yes, Shoto Todoroki did decide to go with Endeavor. Not because he trusts his father, not because he's okay with his father, but actually because he's finally starting to use his fire power. And this was from the words that Izuku spoke to him not too long ago, telling him of maybe using and utilizing that power. And here and there, Izuku would drop hints about the fact that he really does need to use the power that he was gifted, in which is something that would lay pretty dormant within Todoroki for a while until the sports festival, in which Izuku did see Todoroki utilize it slightly, but still, he wasn't able to personally fight Todoroki, so maybe he can draw some of that power out of him when he goes to Endeavor's agency. He heads over to Endeavor's agency via a car that was sent to him, and when he arrives, Shoto Todoroki and Endeavor himself are waiting. Izuku would introduce himself, but Endeavor would tell him to be quiet, saying that they all know who he is. Izuku would laugh and honestly continue to laugh as Endeavor begins to explain what they're going to do. He tells Endeavor that his goal is to help Todoroki utilize his fire and also get stronger, because he wants someone beside him, especially someone that is in his own class, to be of adequate strength. That's why he's here. I mean, he doubts Endeavor can truly get the best out of his own son. And Izuku saying this would seem to be outlandish. I mean, honestly, who in the right mind would tell the #2 hero more or less that he can't train his own son? But, I mean, what is Endeavor gonna do about it? Absolutely nothing. I mean, for one, Izuku's a student, and if he attacks a student and actually injures him, I mean, the trouble he'll get into is immense. But who says Izuku wouldn't absolutely destroy Endeavor, obliterate him, leave him just laying there, more or less out cold? Even Endeavor doesn't know. Frankly, they all have seen what Izuku can do, so it's probably not worth the ego check to try and fight Izuku, especially because if it doesn't go his way, well, it's gonna look even worse than if it did go his way. Izuku would begin working with Todoroki, telling him that the power that he holds is a gift, not a curse. He wants to get this through to Todoroki. He says that quirk, his half and half quirk, is not his father's. If his father had Todoroki's quirk, maybe he would be the #1 hero right now. Endeavor hears this and just gets even more mad, but Izuku just kind of laughs it off, saying that of course he's just kidding. Endeavor doesn't have the work ethic to truly be the #1 hero and outdo someone like All Might. He would laugh once again, and this would just be getting under Endeavor's skin. Todoroki actually kind of enjoying this. I mean, he doesn't really like his father anyways, so the fact that Izuku is kind of clowning on his father throughout this time is kind of hilarious. Endeavor, at the end of the day, is kind of regretting this decision. He's the one that allowed Izuku to more or less come here and be a part of the internship, so the fact that he did that is kind of frustrating him now. He doesn't really want to deal with Izuku now. I mean, he's kind of annoying the hell out of Endeavor, but soon Endeavor would just decide to more or less just tell them all that they're going to be going to Hosu City for some patrolling, some in-field work. Izuku's excited about this. I mean, he's always been a big fan of getting his hands dirty, so he asks if Endeavor's really up to the challenge as well, because he knows that him and Todoroki are, in which Todoroki kind of chuckles at this, but Endeavor tells the kid just to shut up. They drive over to Hosu City, and quickly a realization would begin to rush over Izuku. It seems as if there's some things that are going to occur at Hosu City. Not as major as before. Of course, they don't have Kurogiri, making it a lot harder to transfer Nomus, but they do have All For One, and All For One decides to send off a couple Nomus for Shigaraki just as a way of distraction. And maybe it's just Shigaraki's sadistic ways, and he just wants to see the Nomus completely destroy a city. But this time around only sending about 5 or 6 Nomus. This does give the distraction for Stain wanting to hunt down some more fake heroes, but this time around, Stain doesn't even get the chance to more or less fight Tenya Ida, which, let's be honest, it wasn't really a fight, but he wouldn't even get the chance before Izuku would show his face. Izuku would see Stain and actually bring up the fact that he has a decent amount of respect for him, taking down heroes that are complete and utter fakes. I mean, there probably should be more of that in this world right now. Stain would look at him and believe that he's not a real hero, telling him that it's ironic coming from a fake himself. Izuku says that he's the furthest thing from a fake. Of course, he wouldn't go about killing these fake heroes. He would love to test all of them, though. He would love to make sure that they're truly prepared, because he knows there's a lot of people in this world that are quote-unquote heroes, but truly should not be them. Stain hears the words of Izuku and is slowly but surely being convinced, and Todoroki actually being with his father currently Endeavor, Izuku just slipped away. He didn't really want to bother Todoroki with this event. Maybe he should have, and it could have been beneficial for him, but Izuku says that he could handle this on his own. Tenya tells him that he wants to take on Stain by himself. He's gonna kill the monster. And of course, Izuku shakes his head. It's ironic, because Izuku would shake his head at the same time that Stain does. Izuku would tell Tenya to leave, now, or else. Stain would say the same, and would say that he wants to test this so-called true hero. Izuku would laugh and say that he is truly the honored one, that he might not be a pro hero right now, but he truly is the best. Stain laughs this off and charges toward Izuku, but Tenya refuses to leave. Tenya just wants to more or less stay around and kill the hero killer. He's still this rage, this vengeance is still boiling up or boiling throughout him. But before the fight with Stain, Izuku more or less appears right in front of Tenya and apologizes, knocking him out quickly and throwing him back to the ground in a safe spot. Izuku says that unfortunately he'll have to speak with the young student. Yes, he's a student as well, but Tenya Ida should not be acting in such a way. Now, shall we begin, Stain? The fight would begin, and it would seem as if Stain could somewhat keep up. But that's really not the case. He has no means of even cutting Izuku, not even really touching him at all, but still, he's able to somewhat keep up in speed, but quickly Izuku would make it apparent that it's really not that easy. Izuku would make it extremely apparent that there is no keeping up with him, and that he is levels above Stain. But Izuku immediately tells Stain that just for him, he'll show something that he hasn't shown anybody before. Taking off his blindfold, and the eyes that he shows are kind of daunting. It's as if Izuku's power just ramped up even more from the vision, the overload that he's giving himself. Quickly and swiftly he would defeat Stain, covering his eyes back up once again, telling Stain that his ideals may be somewhat true, but he can't go around killing heroes just for the sake of killing them. There's rehabilitation for a reason, and maybe someday he can turn fake heroes into true ones. He would cuff Stain and drag him off, and as he brings him to the end of the alleyway, a couple people would actually show up, being that of Endeavor and a couple other pro heroes like Manuel and some others. He would throw Endeavor Stain and tell Endeavor that he did one hell of a job. I mean, Stain was taken down so swiftly by the number 2 hero Endeavor. I mean, it was really impressive. Izuku laughs this off and begins to walk away. Endeavor looks at Izuku and is slightly frustrated, not liking the kid. He's too cocky. He's just like him. He's just like All Might. This would frustrate Endeavor a little bit, believing that there's just another All Might clone ready to take the place of the number 1 hero, ready to be the one ahead of Todoroki. This would frustrate him, but what is he supposed to do about it? Absolutely nothing. He can't do anything. I mean, even if he could do something, I mean, what would that even entail? He has no idea. With that said though, the credit would go to Endeavor, and everything would get ironed out more or less the same it did in canon, and Izuku would just get ready for whatever's to come at UA. And what's to come is actually the final exam. The final exam would involve a couple things. Obviously, your regular testing, so the written portion of the exam, and then the practical, getting done with all the studying and stuff like that, and then passing the written, at least in his opinion. He would finally be ready for the practical, something that he's excited for. He assumes he'll be taking on some sort of cool hero or something of that major detail, but he hopes that he gets to fight one person and one person only. And quickly, he would realize that all the stars would begin to align relatively quickly. And that's with Izuku and Bakugo being the only two left. Bakugo being frustrated by this, saying that he doesn't want to fight with this idiot, and Izuku says that he's far from an idiot. I mean, has he seen the test scores? Izuku laughs, saying that he is technically, based on test scores, smarter than Bakugo. And Bakugo would get frustrated by this and try to disagree, but Aizawa chimes in, saying that is technically true. Izuku has been studying harder than usual, which is kind of funny, because in the beginning it didn't seem like Izuku cared much about this whole learning or testing stuff. Of course, Bakugo would be annoyed by this, saying that he won't be beat out by Izuku on every realm of the fascination, but this time around, he'll make sure to show up Izuku, especially in this so-called practical. Just as he says this, the person they'll be facing comes crashing down, and with a loud "I am here," well, you know who's here. It's All Might. It's All Might versus Izuku and Bakugo. Now, how will this fight go? Well, let's just say the advantage would definitely go to the side of the students. And not because of Bakugo, but because of the one and only, the honored one, Izuku Midoriya. When their fight would begin, the gates would swing open and they would charge forward, and Izuku would tell Bakugo that he'll give him his chance. He knows he wants to fight All Might, full-on brawl, hand-to-hand, right in his face. But after he sees that Bakugo can't handle All Might, he's going to jump in. And of course, Bakugo says there will be no need. He blasts Izuku in the face with an explosion, which obviously doesn't hit him, but still, it's like, worth the thought. He blasts forward toward All Might and begins exploding as much as possible on All Might, shooting explosion after explosion after explosion. But these explosions do nothing. I mean, literally and absolutely nothing. I mean, All Might's just standing there tanking him and eventually would grab Bakugo. Izuku would immediately appear as Bakugo is being grabbed, and he would gut punch All Might immediately and then kick him in the chest, sending him sliding away. Bakugo would get let go, and Bakugo would tell Izuku to lay off, that it's still his fight. Izuku says that if he didn't intervene, well, All Might would have broken him just then and there. So, no, it's his fight now. Izuku tells All Might that there's something that he's seen in All Might's, fighting style that is a fatal flaw. All Might kind of laughs at this and says that he would love to be educated by the one that is deemed as the honored one, or whatever he calls himself. All Might would come charging in with a smile, but Izuku would slip the punch relatively easily and land multiple blows to his stomach and also his face. All Might would be shocked, and as he throws punch after punch and more at insane speeds, Izuku would dodge, weave, and counterpunch every single thing thrown at him. At this point, Izuku has the upper hand, and All Might seems to be staggered quite a bit. He would tell All Might that there's one thing that he never learned, and that's hand-to-hand combat. He's always relied on his brute strength. Imagine if All Might learned hand-to-hand combat. I mean, he's a big dude, so it would be hard, at least in a technical sense, but All Might's strength is so incredible. If he just learned technique with those punches, I mean, he would be unstoppable. Like this All Might, Izuku would dodge underneath a punch All Might throws, and perfect technique would punch All Might directly in the kidney. Yeah, a kidney punch. He would hit him so hard that he would stagger back extremely, and even putting himself on the ground. All Might would wince in pain slightly, and Izuku would say that this fight is over. He would throw cuffs on All Might and say that it was an honor fighting him. It always is and always will be. But right now, All Might isn't what he used to be. He's not as peak as he used to be. So sometimes you need to learn to adapt. Yes, he's weaker now than he was years and years and years ago. But if he learns to hone his power into something greater, into more technique, I mean, he can survive in this world a little bit longer than he expects himself. Izuku would grab Bakugo and drag him off. As Bakugo is trying to punch him in the face and shoot explosions, Izuku continues to just drag him off to the finish line. All Might, hearing this, is shocked that his own student gave him a lesson that maybe All Might really needed to hear and really needed to know. He either needs to learn to adapt, learn to be different than a hero. It's not just brute strength. It's not just throwing your body into a punch as hard as possible. Sometimes you need to truly hone your skills, or he'll need to take a step back and not be the pro hero he once was and act like the one he is now. Izuku would carry Bakugo off as he's having his little tantrum. Izuku telling him that having a tantrum is for little kids and not for big boys like Bakugo. He would throw Bakugo toward Aizawa, and Aizawa would slap him in the head, telling him to stop being stupid because the only reason why they passed was because of Izuku's overwhelming strength. Bakugo would be frustrated by this, but would just ignore them, as Aizawa would explain what's to come next. The forest training. They will all go to this camp, and everybody will meet over there, and more or less they'll get a ton of training done. Even the people that failed, they will also go still, but just be ready for some extra classes. Izuku would hear this out and would be excited to see what's going on next. The forest training camp is going to be an amazing thing for everyone. Honestly, a great chance for everyone to get stronger and a great chance for everyone to get better. Now, what they didn't expect though was during this time, the villains would plan an attack on the training camp. And when the villains would come through, it would be an odd situation. They don't have Kurogiri at this moment. So, there's actually someone else that shows up. Someone else by the name of All for One. He has the power to send people, well, through portals and so on. And he decides that if they want something done right, he'll go with them to do it themselves or himself. All for One, Shigaraki, Dabi, Twice, and many others would arrive, and it would storm the forest training camp. And let's just say, Izuku has been waiting for a fight like this. He sees someone coming through, and he can sense someone powerful. Izuku would begin walking toward the forest, and he would see from a distance a boy by the name of Koda. Koda seemingly about to be attacked by a monstrous villain. Izuku would immediately dash over there in a matter of seconds, grabbing Koda and bringing him away to safety. The monster that was about to fight or about to kill Koda is confused, not knowing what just happened, but in a matter of a split second, one flash of light, Izuku punches him so hard that he's out cold in a crater on a wall. Izuku would then wipe his hands and then would begin to peel off his blindfold, putting it away in a pocket, and he would look up with his eyes glaring toward the man that is floating above, All for One. Izuku would begin floating as he hovers over to exactly where All for One is, walking or basically floating right in front of him and asking what he's doing here, truly what he wants. He says that it's really none of the kid's business, nothing that he can do about it anyways. Izuku says he disagrees, that this fight is something he's been looking forward to for a long time. He knows about the fight with him and All Might. He knows what All Might did wrong, and he knows exactly why All for One got out of there with only a messed up face. But this time around, there won't be just a messed up face. Izuku, well, is giving off a terrifying vibe. It seems as if this serious version of Izuku is truly terrifying. He would raise up one finger, and this red ball of energy begins to appear. All For One is completely shocked, but puts his hand out as if he's trying to block it. But as this red burst of this curse technique, this reversal red, comes soaring toward All For One, there is no stopping it. He gets blasted so hard he gets sent into a mountain, creating a massive crater. Everyone below, including the villains, are in complete shock. Did that just happen to All For One? Izuku would immediately follow up as he flicks his fingers, and this purple electricity would then begin to arise around him, sending another ball of this purple energy, sending it straight toward All For One. This energy seemed to be limitless. It was so potent and destructive that it was insane. It would collide with All For One, and Izuku would slowly float over to the crater that All For One lays in. Mass completely shattered, and All For One completely on the ground. The plan seems to be going off the rails so quickly. All they wanted to do was get Bakugo. That was it. What's happening? How is this happening? What the hell is that kid? Izuku would walk up to All For One, and he would mock All For One, saying that is he truly the one that gave, All Might himself such a hard time? This is insane, truly ironic. And All For One would immediately look up and grab onto Izuku's arm and says that is game over. Izuku would look at his arm and then look at All For One and then look back at All For One's arm. What do you think you're doing? I mean, seriously, what do you think you're doing? He cuts off All For One's arm and more or less raises it up and throws it to the side. All For One screams in pain. Whoa. I thought it was game over, Mr. All For One. I guess not, huh? He would grab All For One and say that even if he wanted to take his quirk, who says he could even control it? Who says he could truly even use it? All For One would try to create a portal, but Izuku would bring him up into the sky. No. There is no leaving. Izuku would immediately begin to use his domain expansion, Unlimited Void. He would tell All For One that there is no choice in this manner. He's going to fall right here and right now. In a matter of seconds, All For One is out cold and, frankly, in a far worse condition than you could possibly imagine. Izuku would be floating with more or less out cold All For One, getting held up by one arm. Izuku would look around to see that the other villains are stunned, shocked, and frankly, there's no way out. Izuku would tell Aizawa that it's time to go. He would immediately dash in, helping the rest of the students and heroes destroy Nomu or other villains that needed to be knocked out and defeated, and all of the villains and people that are currently there would be defeated extremely fast and extremely swift. I mean, they underestimated how strong Izuku was. I mean, ironically enough, they underestimated him, but still brought All For One. But it didn't even matter. It didn't even matter one bit. Izuku has said it before. His goal is to be the best, not only in Japan, but everywhere in the world. So this is just a start. They bring in all the villains, and the forest training camp would come to a close relatively early. But still, does it matter when you have shut down All For One and the entirety of the League of Villains almost in a matter of, just 30 minutes? Well, Izuku would be commended for this, would be applauded for this, but they would tell him that he can't really get the credit. And Izuku doesn't care. I mean, as long as they're off the streets and he doesn't have to deal with them anymore, that's all that matters. He'll be the #1 hero in the future. He doesn't need the title now. He would then say that All Might should get the credit. I mean, everyone thought that All Might was already going to be at the forest training camp. Let's just say that All For One invaded and All Might handled it. he would look at All Might and give a little bit of a wink after taking off a part of his blindfold, and then closes his eyes back up once again. All Might would say that he truly is an impressive one, stronger than even himself at this moment, maybe even stronger than himself when he was in his prime. He's impressed by Izuku. Beyond any of a shadow of a doubt, Izuku will be the #1 hero, and he will be the future of Hero Society. All Might saying this makes Izuku feel a little bit fuzzy inside. He thanks him for all the help and he's so grateful for all the stuff he said. He sounds sarcastic, but in a way Izuku is completely grateful. He just likes making jokes about super serious or sentimental situations. But still, I mean, it's just Izuku being Izuku. With that said, Forest training camp over, All for One in the League of Villains completely captured and under wraps. I mean, what else needs to be done? What else needs to happen? I mean, Izuku handled that relatively easily. But luckily, there's still some things for Izuku to do. Yes, it might not be insane for him to do so, but he has a couple things that need to get done. For starters, they do work on their super moves and stuff like that, but Izuku has things so under wraps that it doesn't necessarily matter. Next is the more or less the hero licensing, or the provisional hero licensing exam, in which this would be super easy for Izuku. I mean, it wouldn't even be really a challenge at all. Izuku would take this on, and every aspect of it he would just destroy, easily pass. You're talking about the dodgeball type, you have the tag red lights portion, easy peasy, he finishes that in a matter of seconds. Are we talking about the rescue portion? I mean, he'll rescue anybody he has to, and it's super easy for him to do so. And when the villains begin to invade, or the fake villains with Gang Orca and the people that are instructed as actors, well, that goes easy as well. Izuku actually jumps in and defeats all of them before Todoroki and Inasa can make a fool out of themselves. So it's actually perfect for them because they don't actually, not get their hero or provisional hero license, which is beneficial for all of them entirely. In terms of Bakugo though, there's no helping him. I mean, he has no filter, he acts like an idiot, and frankly, it just ends with him, not getting his license. So he's really one of the only people that don't get his license. With that said though, I mean, everything kind of goes relatively similar, or basically the same, leading up to the fight with Mirio. This fight with Mirio is something Izuku really looks forward to. Yes, All for One was strong, but he was very one-dimensional. Izuku sees Mirio as a brand new hurdle. Yes, that might sound crazy. I mean, All for One is definitely stronger than Mirio, right? But still, he's a brand new hurdle. And eventually, when Izuku would more or less start fighting Mirio when all of his classmates are, knocked out by him, he begins fighting him and enjoys the feeling out process. He begins to spar. It feels like a spar with Mirio, and Mirio would begin to ramp it up. Eventually, it felt like Mirio was exceeding the normal capabilities of a peak human being, which does give him the idea that maybe he has an underlying power that he's not too talkative about. Izuku would bring this up, saying that it seems like he's getting faster by a percentage, 5%, 10%. How much is he using of the power that's dormant within him? Izuku would smile and say that even with that, he won't really be able to keep up, but it excites him. It's a new level to overcome. Mirio is shocked to see that Izuku has figured him out so quickly. Izuku says that his technique, his fighting style is so unique, it's even giving him a little bit of trouble. I mean, the phasing in and out and so on and so forth, it's so hard to predict, but still, it's so interesting, so fun. But after a while, Izuku would tell him that the fight has been over for a while. He apologizes for drawing it out, and he doesn't want to make him feel bad, but he would hit him on the back of the neck, and Mirio would stagger to the ground. He would sit down, and he would look at Izuku and smile, saying that Sir Night-Eye was very fond of him for a reason, and he can see why now. I mean, his power is amazing, immense. His technique in terms of, hand-to-hand combat is unrivaled. Mirio says that he would love to train with him again, especially after he maybe goes to Sir Night-Eye's work study, in which Izuku gives him a thumbs up, saying that he'll definitely be interested in Sir Night-Eye's work study. I mean, he assumes they got some big plans, so he definitely wants to go work with them. Mirio and Izuku, being that they have really similar personalities, would definitely be kind of like really good friends almost immediately. And frankly, he would just be excited to work with Mirio, and on top of that, work with Sir Night-Eye. Everybody in his class would be shocked, like, God, how much better is Izuku than everyone else? I mean, that's a pretty obvious, explanation. He's just, the honored one. I mean, throughout the heavens and the earth, he's just better than everybody. But still, I mean, they feel as if there's no catching up to him. They will try, but there is really no catching up to him. With that said, though, what is to come is Sir Night-Eye's agency. Izuku Midoriya has now teamed up with not only Sir Night-Eye, but also Mirio, other known as Lemillion. Now, this is a team-up that Izuku has been looking forward to for a while now, and he's just flat out excited to work with both of them. And who's to blame him? I mean, these people are extremely powerful, and on top of that, they are extremely popular. He knows of them from a long time ago, knowing of Lemillion and knowing of Sir Night-Eye, and just knowing what they represent. So when it comes to his plate, of course he says yes. He meets with Sir Night-Eye, and he speaks with him for a little bit. And when they speak, let's just say they talk about what needs to happen. Yes, All For One and the League of Villains may have been seized, and most, if not all of them, have been put away in prisons that won't be touched ever. But they also need to deal with some other people that are currently on the big overhead, and that's the Shiha Hazaikai. The Shiha Hazaikai are an issue, a giant issue, and well, let's just say it's been a long time coming since they really need to seize, overhaul, and shut down the Shiha Hazaikai. Izuku asks what their process has looked like so far, but they say that it hasn't really been a process. He's confused, but they explain. They explain that, well, it's been kind of off-putting in a way. It's been kind of difficult to seize them / capture them in general because, well, they're kind of slippery. And Izuku's confused. I mean, yeah, they can go out on patrols and stuff like that, but they literally have not done anything to find them. And yeah, I mean, they have done things to find them, but it doesn't mean it's not extremely difficult to do so. And Izuku says that they can start with patrols. I mean, I'm sure that's what they've been doing already, but let's start with patrols and go from there. Because at the end of the day, if they can find them via patrols, then they should be good. And of course, they think this is a good idea as well, but I mean, patrols only go so far. How are you going to draw out someone like Overhaul with just patrolling? In which Izuku doesn't really know, but he says that hopefully they can figure out some way of finding him while they're patrolling Japan, telling them that him and Mirio will patrol because they can cover ground really quickly. Izuku and Mirio then go out and begin their patrol, but the idea that they would even find Overhaul was slim to none, and ironically enough, you get put in situations that you wouldn't even believe sometimes. While walking down the street, Izuku would feel something bump into his leg. He would look down to see that it's a little girl that has bandages all over her body. He picks her up and asks if she's okay. I mean, what's going on? I mean, she's so little and so sad. Why is she so sad? She doesn't smile at all, and Overhaul would come out of the alleyway saying that his daughter is a real klutz. He apologizes and says that they should really be getting home. Izuku looks at him and then looks back at Mirio. Looks at him and then looks back at Mirio. Then looks back at him and then back at Mirio. And then looks at Overhaul once again. You look really familiar, but I can't put my finger on it. He snaps one time and everything around them begins to change, as if it's becoming an infinite void. Izuku continues to talk. What is your name? What is your name? Yeah, weird mask. What is his name? Mirio, can you help me out here? He's obviously taunting him. I mean, it's a pretty blatant tactic, and Overhaul is just stuck in place, looking at the things happening around him, the infinite void overwhelming his senses, and Mirio is confused. Why is this not affecting him? Why is it not affecting the little girl? What is even happening? Izuku looks at Eri and tells her to look at the pretty lights. They're so cool, huh? And Izuku is just kind of stoic. He doesn't. It's as if Overhaul, this massive, crazy, insane villain that's in front of him, means nothing. Absolutely nothing. And it's kind of a wild thing to think about, but it's true. Izuku, well, can do anything and would defeat him. He's just leagues above someone like Overhaul. His quirk is way too primitive, and the fact is, once he locked him in his domain expansion, there was no way of getting out. There was no way of doing anything. Izuku tells Overhaul that there's really nothing he can do now but collapse. Everything would begin to shatter, change, and eventually erase itself from seemingly reality, and Overhaul would pass out. Izuku would grab Overhaul and then give Eri to Mirio. He would grab Overhaul and tell him that, well, he'll be bringing him over to, well, a prison, and he'll be staying there for a long time. Overhaul unable to really do anything. He's just out cold. Completely. He's carried all the way to a prison, tied or locked up and given quirk cancellation cuffs and anything you can really think of. And he's shipped off to a high security prison. Everyone's kind of shocked. I mean, how the hell did Mirio and Izuku do that so quickly? But it was more Izuku. Izuku told them that it was really just a matter of finding him. I mean, that's truly it. Once he found him, well, it was over. There was no way he was escaping, especially in a situation like this. Izuku would find it kind of funny. I mean, it was kind of ironic that a situation like this would happen. I mean, he found him perfectly and the perfect timing at that. With that said, though, I mean, it kind of worked out for him. He captured someone like Overhaul, saved a little girl like Eri, and nothing even happened. I mean, nobody got hurt, of course. But a siege on the building with all of, Overhaul's lackeys still need to happen. So, of course, that's something that does occur. They absolutely kind of just walk through everything that was built up. I mean, we're talking about the Shia Hazaikai without Overhaul. I mean, they're commendable, but they're not League of Villains level by any means, and they're taken down pretty swiftly. Izuku and everyone else takes them down, especially without the leadership of Overhaul. It's kind of difficult for them. The quirk erasing bullets are tried to be used, but that doesn't even work, because when they're shot at somebody, Izuku just steps in front of them, bouncing off infinity, and, well, it doesn't even matter. I mean, he has a literal protective bubble around him. I mean, no bullet's gonna hit him in general, but still, I mean, they can try their best at least. But that is it. That is it for Overhaul. That is it for the Shia Hazaikai. And of course, there are still some people out there they need to deal with. And there are still some people that they're going to have to deal with in the long run. They capture every one of the Shia Hazaikai, put them in prison, and Izuku begins to speak with the people at UA and also Sir Night-Eye's agency. While speaking to them, they learn of more and more things that need to be dealt with, including this monstrous being that they eventually found in a mountainous area. This is Gigantomachia. Now, yes, it is kind of like he's a dormant giant at this moment because both All For One, Shigaraki, and all of them are in prison, but he still needs to be captured. And they can all assume that if they try to capture him, he's not going to go down without a fight. Izuku says that he'll volunteer to go help as long as they have a way to sedate him. He'll keep him under wraps as long as possible. In which they think this is a great idea. I mean, Izuku might be able to beat him flat out, but if they just sedate him, that would be the best way of going about it. So all Izuku has to do is really just distract him for as long as possible. So they bring in a bit of a task force, including him, Midnight, and many others, so that they can more or less just sedate him, pin him down to the ground, and Midnight would be able to more or less put him to sleep. In which this does go pretty easily. He distracts Gigantomachia, fighting him, shooting him with certain blasts, and shooting him with certain techniques that he has. And he just continues to trap Gigantomachia in a different realm. But it doesn't really work that well. I mean, it is kind of like he's a brainless monster, but he tries to kind of revert his brain, revert his mind. But it's kind of difficult, especially because of some quirks that Gigantomachia has. It seems like he has some sort of quirk that is like basically a loyalty like of quirk. He can't really manipulate quirks like that. It doesn't really, or at least he doesn't know how to in the long grand scheme of things. But still, eventually he's able to stall out Gigantomachia, this giant monster, by just floating around and fighting him from long range. And eventually he would be put to rest, put to sleep, and they would be able to drag him off and put him in a high grade facility. Now, everything seemed to be kind of at ease. I mean, they dealt with him. They dealt with, the League of Villains. They dealt with the Shiha Hazaikai. There's not much more for Izuku to really deal with. And on top of that, there's not much more for him to really do. He continues to work, of course, with the Sir Night-Eye. He continues to work with them and learn new things, train, and so on and so forth, even making a bit of a good friendship with Mirio. He believes that him and Mirio could be the next 1 and 2 hero. I mean, that's probably what's going to occur. He's seen the strength of Mirio and actually sparred with him a couple times, telling him to go all out, that he wants to see his true strength. And when in seeing this, he can tell that Mirio will be levels above almost everyone else. But of course, there is no getting levels above him. He kind of laughs about this, and he says, basically says like there's no way that he'll be able to output him and be better than him, but still, I mean, it's worth a shot. I mean, he can try his best, and he'll commend him for it. Izuku kind of laughs about this, but still, I mean, there's nothing else that he'll need to really do, and frankly, he's happy to have someone like Mirio that he can work with, spar with, and so on and so forth. And, well, there's not much to be said other than that. They continue to work together and try to neutralize any villain groups they possibly can find, but eventually they do hear of another villain group, a pretty coordinated villain group. And after they get information about where this villain group is, there's a bit of approach that they want to take to find where they are, and also, well, to take them down. Now, here's the thing. They are kind of on their own at this moment. Maybe to them, they feel that everything seems to be going their way, seems to be going pretty well. The Meta Liberation Army seems to be actually pretty well and pretty good. There's a lot of people in one town, an isolated town, and they soon will arise once again. But after Night-Eye and many others get information on this, Izuku sees this to be a great opportunity, and to see if UA would allow not only him, but his entire class, and maybe even Class 1B, to go handle this issue. Now, of course, Izuku would love to do something like this, but there's a couple things that need to happen beforehand, in which they do their whole little Class 1B versus Class 1A type of tournament style. But I'm not gonna have to undercut this. Izuku would absolutely dominate in any fashion of this thing, and any fashion of anything. For one, there's no way Izuku will lose in a state like this unless he decides he wants to lose on purpose. Now, he won't do that because he wants to make sure his class wins. I mean, he's a competitive person. So he'll teach them a bit of a lesson, but other than that, I mean, he'll make sure to win. And once Class 1A wins, he speaks with not only Aizawa, but also the principal Nezu about allowing them to more or less try and seize these villains. These villains are known as the Meta Liberation Army. Now, they would like to kind of go out and stop them entirely, because then all of the villain groups that they know of in Japan, well, they'll be shut down, and they'll be shut down for good. Izuku would listen as Nezu and Aizawa would explain further what they want them to do, and eventually you would see Class 1A and Izuku floating above, ready to invade the city, ready to take down all the villains that are up ahead. They would begin to merge on the city, and let's just say this would be a fight that was challenging for those of Class 1A. But the progression that they've seen with both Todoroki, with Bakugo, and many others, this would make it far easier than you would expect. Izuku would immediately go for the main honcho, the main guy that would be leading everything, Redestro. And Izuku was looking forward to this. He was wondering if maybe, just maybe, that he'll get a good fight out of him, a great fight. And let's just say the great fight that he wanted so badly was not really something he was going to get, because he would take down Redestro relatively easily. Even Redestro himself would know who Izuku is. He wouldn't be scared, but he would definitely be on the back foot the majority of the time. He would strike and he would try to stop Izuku, but there was no stopping him. There was not a single thing that would stop Izuku from defeating this so-called leader of the Liberation Front. He would knock him out, and even with Redestro's 100% of his stress meta ability, he doesn't allow Redestro to even take another inch, not another step. He'd be taken down, and it would look as if everything was going according to plan. Izuku took down the main leader, and he turns around to see that some of his own classmates are converging on the area, assumingly meaning that everybody else was defeated. The entirety of Class 1A has taken down, well, the Meta Liberation Army. The League of Villains have fallen. All for One is in prison, and the Shia Hazaikai has been put to rest. It seems that Japan is now free from militia, free from villain groups, and free from many things alike, which is perfect for those who truly wanted to help. Izuku has helped this world more than you could possibly imagine, and he's done things that nobody would even believe to be possible. With that said, this story may continue on, and Izuku may continue on to be what we all know as a potential, or will be, the #1 hero. But that story is for another day. With that said, I hope y'all enjoyed, and I hope y'all enjoyed the finale of the series, and also the series in general. And if y'all did, make sure to leave a like, sub, comment down below, all that good stuff, and I hope all y'all have an amazing day. Later.